Okay, so welcome to the show today. And here's my question for you. So whether you're driving down the road, you're headed to your next sales call or your appointment, you're about to pick up the phone to make a cold call or to call a prospect, you're in the gym thinking about how you're going to structure your day letter for your sales calls, or if you're in a meeting with other people in your company and you're just wondering, I want you to think about this question I'm going to ask, and our guests are going to help us answer this. Have you ever wondered what it takes to be a top sales and marketing organization in your industry? If you're just an individual salesperson or a coach or a consultant, what does it take to be the top in your market, the trusted authority, the ones who make all the money, the ones who get promoted whenever they want to, and the ones who have all of the respect from other business owners, from companies in their space, from other salespeople? Our next guests are going to answer that question for you. Let me give you a small taste of their backgrounds, and there's a lot when you do research. Craig and Dan both work for a company called TOPO. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm from Arkansas. We don't know how to pronounce names. And it's a Gartner company out of Connecticut. TOPO researches the strategy, people, process, technology, and tactics of the world's fastest growing companies across their sales and marketing parts. Craig Rosenberger, hoping I'm pronouncing your name, is the co-founder and chief analyst of TOPO. And Dan Gottlieb, are you related to the guy on ESPN? Is the leader of TOPO sales practices. So please welcome to the show, Craig and Dan. How are you guys?
Doing great. It's actually, you nailed everything except for it's Craig Rosenberg.
Rosenberg.
It's okay, man. You getting TOPO right was impressive.
Most TOPO is a hard one. Now, Dan, is it Gottlieb? I mean, you're related to the
Gottlieb. Yeah, you nailed it. But I am not related to Doug. I get a call every March. The reason why people think that we're related is the last name, and B, both of us enjoy having hot takes on topics. So,
I love that. I watched that show once. I'm like, that is not a last name that I hear very often. But hey, we're excited to feature you here with today. I know our guests are going to really soak up. Like, can you imagine helping companies, the fastest growing companies, and knowing what they're doing in sales and marketing to be that successful? If you had that knowledge, what it would do for your business or for your sales pipeline. So this applies to a top, if you want to be a top business owner, top rep, top coach, top consultant. So I'm excited to have you guys on. I love talking with people on the show about human behavior in the sales world, what that means, sales process, sales systems, and really the data that backs up the best practices. So I want to dive right into your story. Let's give our listeners a feel for your background and how your advisory firm helps sales and marketing organizations grow revenue extremely quick. So can you tell us maybe a little bit about your background and how all this started out for you? Like, how did you learn all these skills to help companies like you do? Were you just born out of your mother's womb and suddenly you just knew all this? Or how did it happen?
I'll start with it. This is Craig, and everyone start their timer to make sure I can do this in a couple minutes. But
go ahead.
Yeah. Everyone, by the way, it's so funny you said that. Everyone asked me that. It's like, yeah, when you're in high school, you're like, gosh, I really want to run a research advisory firm focused on studying the world's fastest growing companies in sales.
Of course.
And so look, the TOPO origin story, I think, is a good one, right? It was basically myself and Scott Albro, who's the CEO founder. And I was the sort of crazy guy co-founder. This was about 6 years ago, and we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do. We had just sold another company, and we were just using our background in sales and marketing to go do basically consulting gigs in Silicon Valley. And what we learned really fast was that there was so much transformation happening in the way that people sold then, by the way, the way people did sales and marketing, that everyone wanted to know, hey, what are the best companies in the world doing? What does that look like?
What really works?
Yeah. And we said, well, maybe there's a maybe there's a company here that instead of sort of researching thousands of companies and figuring out what's wrong, can we just look at the world's fastest growing and figuring out what they do? That was the origin of TOPO. And by the way, that value prop hit out of the gate. We never starved. I mean, it was like everyone, it was an insatiable thirst because everyone recognizes what you know, which is the game's changing.
Sure.
And as we all know as well, we got 10 years of change in 10 weeks of the most recent world events. And so we're there for that. So we study, basically the premise here is we're going to study the world's fastest growing companies. And as you said, we look at them from their strategy all the way down to their tactics, everything that they do. And we put that together and we present that back to customers. And so that's the overall story. I'm the chief analyst, so I look at everything. And then we have with us Dan, who is who leads our sales and our SDR practice, which is our dedicated practice for inside sales.
I think TOPO, the concept of your company is amazing because you're right. I think probably most consulting companies out there are focused on the problems, like problems, which is great. But if you have a company that's, hey, here's what the best companies are doing, this, and this, that technically solves those problems, right? So when you come at it at that angle, here's what the most successful companies are doing in marketing and sales, people are going to want to have that knowledge 100%. So Dan, let's go over to you because I know you're leading the sales charge at TOPO. Can you tell us your favorite sales story from your career? What's your favorite one?
Oh man, I
wanted to start the show off with that today.
So, what's amazing is that my favorite sales story, there's so many ways to go with that.
Right.
I actually want to tell a story about a career that has nothing to do with sales, about a lesson that I learned that has been invaluable in helping me understand how to be an effective business and sales professional.
Sure.
When I was in college, I used to caddy, and that was a really exciting experience for a lot of reasons. But I'm one of those people that when I get into something for the first time, I'm really intense about it, right? I want to do it really well. And so I was caddying with a couple of this guy Jimmy, who was one of the co-caddies, and it was four ladies we were caddying for. And when I would get down and I'd read the putts, and I would sort of like literally I would overdo it, right? I'd get down sort of like, well, if you do it at this speed in this direction, you can go this way, or you can try it this way and this way. And I would spend 10 minutes doing it, and I was trying to show that I could do it, right? I was trying to sort of put on the show and demonstrate that I understand. And I walk over after doing that for this one lady, and Jimmy, who I had never caddied with before, as my co-caddy, he just kind of mutters to me like, "Dude, you just overwhelmed the crap out of her. Like,
right?
She doesn't want you to get up there and get out a protractor and try to give her 45 different options. Get up there, act like you've been there, tell her exactly what to do with confidence, and walk away.
Yeah.
That's what she wants you to do."
Yeah.
And so that was an incredible lesson in reading the audience.
Sure.
And that light bulb went off for me in a way that made me a much better caddy, but it brought that mindset to sales. And I've never forgotten that story.
Well, you're right. You keep it simple, right? So a confused buyer is someone who never buys, right? You always hear that concept, but you proved it right on the head because that lady just wanted to be told what to do, not 10 different ways and make up her own decision. She didn't know any better, right? She wasn't a professional. Tell us, and this is an interesting question that I'd like to know. And I ask this a lot to my guests, and I get different viewpoints on this, but tell us your view of the current buying and selling environment that we're in 2020. What's your view?
Craig, why don't you start?
Yeah. Well, what do you mean? Nothing's changed. No, I'm just sorry. With no crowd, it's hard. Nobody's laughing. But thank you, Jeremy, for giving me that. So it's intriguing. I'm going to start with this premise, which is there is tremendous opportunity for sales in this market.
Sure.
And now let me go through because someone's going to be like, well, wait a minute. Like, is this one of those all hope, no reality guys? And that's not true. It is very challenging, but I'm going to start with that premise because in the world of sales, we have all the books we've all read that are about creating FUD. You don't have to create FUD, guys. They have FUD. Okay. And so what does that mean? So there's a couple things that have changed in how businesses buy. So one is there's all in and there's full. There's no calls. There's no checks.
Yeah.
If you find the folks that are all in, which, we have clients we're tracking that are coming within 90% and 100% of stretch goal numbers with less deals than they ever anticipated.
Sure.
Because there are people that are betting into the storm, that are doing deals faster and bigger because, guys, like in the 8-year bull market leading up to this, you had to go in there, find a champion and help build the case. Now you have to find the case and put yourself into it. There are people investing into the market. When you get your hands on those deals, those are the big deals. Now that's one. So we've got
increasing your average sales size too. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. So basically we're calling it a mission critical priority market. You've got to identify those folks that are willing to buy. The great news again is we felt like leading into this year that the decision makers who we spent a lot of time sort of focusing all our sales training on, but they were very passive.
Yeah.
They put a lot of the work on the people that work for them, and it was basically that sounds good, sign in. Now the stakes are high. Mm-hmm. Your C-level, most deals, these great deals are C-level driven, and that's your tell. And you got to figure out who that is, because that is, and I know that's classic selling, but we have to admit you didn't need it for the last 8 years. Now you do, right? These are big deals happening from the top down.
Well, I think it's easy to get lazy in selling in terms of, like you said, the last 8 years, in terms of economic expansion, where it's easier to sell. And I wrote this down for some notes here, but in times of economic contraction that we're in right now, and that'll probably go back up, but in times of economic contraction, every shortcoming the salesperson has will only be magnified and brought out even further, and will result for lost sales for you and your company. Easy to sell in economic expansion. Economic contraction, you have to up your sales game. You have to learn better skills. You have to learn the right skills, because everything that you do wrong that you didn't get caught up on when it was easier to sell is only going to be magnified, and it's going to cause you to lose more sales. 100%.
That's right. I mean, you look at, Dan and I work with hundreds of sales leaders. It's like, you look at pipelines today, they are contracted, they are winnable, they are bigger. The second part is the buying committees that everyone freaked everyone out about. It's like 25 people in the buy. That is, decisions are streamlined now. You've got to identify the C-level. You have to find what we call the deputy. That is the person under the C-level that has been deputized to lead this mission critical priority. Sure. The sort of thing where it's like 25 people in the decision. Nobody has time for that, because the third thing is, these big deals are faster. If you come and tell me I've got a deal, it's an 18-month sales cycle, I say you don't have a deal. Nobody is looking at 18 months right now. Every deal that's happening, every initiative is to make the next 3 to 9 months better. Yeah. By the way, for sales, that's great. I mean, that's urgency in a nutshell.
And it's a big thing that we talk about, with our clients and our companies that we train, and, salespeople. Right now, you have to be much better at what I call problem finding. Okay. And that means uncovering challenges and problems that your prospect doesn't even know they have. Or maybe they know about the problem, but they don't know how bad the problem is. They don't know the root cause of that problem. They don't know what it's doing them, right? Or they don't know, if they don't do anything about it, the potential consequences of what can happen. Because without you asking the right questions to help your prospects uncover those problems in their mind that they didn't even think they had, it's impossible for them to ever buy from you, so you can actually solve their problems, right? We're all taught you have to be a great problem solver. You can't solve crap unless you can help them find the right problems so they actually buy from you. So now in our day and age, you have to be even better at problem finding. I call it being a problem finder and problem solver, not a product pusher. What are most salespeople, most organizations trained at, right? I hate to say it, we train some very large companies, Fortune 500 companies, and we go in their training programs, and they're all about products and features and benefits, and that's all they talk about. And we call them product pushers, because what do? They're taught to ask a few logical-based questions. Mr. Prospect, can you tell us what keeps you awake at night? boring, right? Everybody uses that. They say a few logical based answers back. And then what does a salesperson do? They go into their pitch, right? Talking about how great they are and the benefits and the features. And that's like taking a bucket of mud and throwing it up against the wall, hoping and praying that something we're going to say is going to trigger that person to magically want to buy from that. And I call that hopium. It's kind of my joke, but it's a drug that so many salespeople and companies are on, where they just hope and pray that something they're going to say is going to trigger them to magically want to buy. And it's such a unpredictable and hard way to make a living. So I agree with you 100% that times have definitely changed and you've got to be on top of your game for sure. Dan, your thoughts?
Well, what's amazing about this environment, going back to Craig's comment about the opportunity for sales professionals, is that there's never been more demand for real-time insight and ideas.
Yeah.
And so what we've been seeing organizations do to respond to this, right? The selling is really just a reaction to the needs of the buyers.
Sure.
And in this case, what we've seen sellers do, and we've seen organizations do to help them, is try to provide real-time insight, ideas, stories around what's going on the front lines.
Right.
Create meetings that have high value to individuals that may not necessarily directly have to do with the product that you solve, or it's marginally or connected to the way that you may help solve that problem, as a means of uncovering what it is they're working on. Where are the anxieties and the pressure points in the organization, and just positioning yourself as someone that you can trust. And that has been, I think, that has always been one of the differences between more legendary sales professionals and sort of your average run-of-the-mill, right, order taking type of seller.
Right.
However, what we're seeing now is organizations investing in this as an approach at a rate that we've never really seen before. And so that looks like investing in things like a newsroom, or a way of collecting information from the front lines, turning sales development frontline reps, when you have an objection or you get shut down, pausing and saying, well, can you just take a minute to tell me, what are you thinking about, so I can be a hero and take that information back to the front line? And that behavior being celebrated. It's really small and nuanced, but that has been something that we have seen buyers have an insatiable demand for right now.
Well, they're looking for the trusted authority, right? They're not looking for just another salesperson who's there to try to sell them something. You're right. You have to learn how to be the trusted authority with what you're offering, and that really sets you apart. That kind of leads me into the next question, and you guys kind of already answered this, but what do you feel are the biggest challenges that face sales today? Your thoughts on that? There's a lot.
Yeah, there is. I think it's the easy way to start this, on the biggest challenges, are understanding if you're putting your resources in the right place, right? Are you setting yourself up to fail by just not necessarily even thinking about who are we talking to, right? That's a crucial strategic step that we've seen high growth organizations pivot immediately, is reanalyzing their target market and reallocating their resources accordingly. And that's a strategic decision that happens on top of the sales reps themselves.
Right.
But the sellers themselves are responsible for taking that frontline information and bringing it back to the market, right? So in essence, it's a little bit of a strategic discussion about where is our product market fit and where can we actually do deals right now. And every organization, the answer for that is a little bit different. We made jokes about Zoom video communications earlier, right? But we've also, we can talk about all the different pieces of software that are used to facilitate, marketing type of events. But then there's other sort of sub-markets that have popped up that you may not have thought of before. So
you're right. And even in like the speaking industry, right? So no speaking engagements, all of 2020, like all of my friends in the speaking industry, including myself, everything's been canceled, right? So how do you shift from that? Well, now you're starting to see a lot of virtual events, virtual speaking events, because you're right. The top organizations, like in my space, even like Tony Robbins, who is more of a personal development company, they're shifting to more virtual events, right? So you're actually right. Like it's all about shifting. So if something is, you're not able to do that because of COVID or whatever right now, it's how are you shifting to to maybe a new niche or something different. It's all about shifting and looking at what your audience is after, what their actual needs are, because maybe their needs have changed as well. So you have to adopt with that. You have a sales methodology I wanted to ask you about that I was reading about, extreme value. Can you tell us more about that? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. So this is a really important topic because, in many ways, as Craig mentioned earlier, the idea of value selling has been around, and the idea of being a top performer by going the extra mile has been this sort of luxurious, nice to have thing that we've talked about, but you haven't really needed it in order to hit your quotas. Well, now extreme value is the name of our sales methodology, and we see that as fundamentally required in order to be able to meet the expectations and exceed the expectations of buyers at every single interaction point across beginning of the sales process, even up through marketing, all the way through the point of onboarding and beyond.
Sure.
And so this idea of exceeding a buyer's expectations, it usually comes in the form of the way you interact, what happens in the meetings, and even the substance of the meetings themselves.
Tell us more about like substance of the meetings. What do you mean by that?
Well, we talked a little, totally. So we talked a few minutes ago about how do you create engagement that's meaningful to somebody? And sometimes that's just facilitating a conversation. So the extreme value sales process is about creating a very organization-wide intention about facilitating highly valuable meetings and interactions with buyers.
Okay.
So what does that mean? In some cases, right, this is going to vary where every company is going to be a little bit different, but we call this manifests in what we call a high value offer.
Yeah.
A high value offer is a meeting that's so irresistible that it's compelling enough for an executive to want to spend their time there.
Sure.
So the best example of this of all time is Zora's subscription economy deck. I think everyone, it was like 2016 when that sort of the best sales deck ever article, may have floated away over across the Twitter sphere, LinkedIn, email threads, et cetera, And the whole point of that was we have an executive presentation where we can come in and give you a point of view on how how many industries are shifting because of subscriptions and why that's so important for you to be able to manage, right?
Yeah.
And so the reason for that as a great example is a seller could use it as a way to create and facilitate a conversation about another business's strategy with subscriptions.
Sure.
And so that is an example of a high value offer. And that's an example of extreme value selling is, do we have these kinds of resources that we can offer to streamline a sales process?
Yeah, I would just add, Jeremy, really quick. So just remember, so this is a sales show. We're going to keep on the sales thing, but extreme value is across the entire customer life cycle. And it should, and I know all the salespeople are like, I'm going to send this to marketing because we have alignment issues all over the place. I get it. But we want to think about value across the entire life cycle. So what's happening in the dark internet? What happens when marketing invites people to, what happens in sales, et cetera? That's what Dan said that. But remember, if you sort of take your earlier question and we tie it back to what is the biggest challenge? There's so many challenges. One of them is engagement. Look, all of us in the industry told you can't send messages to come and say, hey, we'd love to come in and demo our product. That
nobody
doesn't
cares.
work. Right. And today it definitely doesn't work. So we had if you look at our data, it's like, what's your biggest issue? It's like buyers, not the simple issue. We have all these complex ones so we can look really cool. And it's basically buyers are not willing to take meetings. Right. And that just keeps climbing and climbing. And so if you take Dan's example and then you combine that with what changed in the buying environment, and you said it too, which is the buyer changed. We're talking about sellers. Yeah. The buyer changed. Yeah. Everything about them. You have to figure out what they want to talk about. And I can tell you right now, trying to figure out if your product is what they want to talk about is actually harder than figuring out. I can give you a clue. They want to know what other people like them are doing to solve this issue. They
don't care about your product. They care about the end result. You don't sell products and services. You sell the end result of the problems you solve and the results it's going to get for them. And that's where they'll pay anything to have results, They don't care about your product or what it does. They just care about the end result.
Yeah. And so what we've been working on with a customer or someone will come to us and say, well, look, we're not getting meetings anymore. We say, well, great. Why don't we figure out what they want to talk about? What do they want to talk about? Yeah. So it's a oil and gas company. They want to talk about how are the other oil and gas companies going to dig themselves out of the oil crisis and, all of these. That's step number one. And guess what, salespeople, you know a lot. You talk to way more people in their market than they do. Uh-huh. And so even if the organization doesn't support you, you are suited to have that conversation.
Right.
And so anyway, I just wanted to add to that. I think it's a really important thing, which is like a very simple idea around extreme value is, well, you got to start with meeting their expectations. So what do they want to talk about? And you start there and then you can exceed it.
And I love that you said that, Craig, because this might sound controversial because when I bring this up, and this is in a book that's about to be published, I'm a big critic of BANT. If you're familiar with BANT, budget, authority, need, timing. And it's been something that's been around corporate America for the past 25, 30 years. Oh, BANT, they're not qualified. Here's the problem with BANT. And I hate to go off on a different tangent here.
That's okay.
The problem with BANT is salespeople use it and companies use it, don't understand the sales process. They don't understand human psychology. They don't understand human behavior. Because if you think BANT works, you're basically suggesting that every prospect you talk to already knows they have problems. They already know they have challenges. And do they have the budget set aside? Because for them to have a set aside budget for something, they must think that they already have a problem or a challenge. Here's the challenge. Most prospects don't know what their problems are. They don't honestly know. They might know a little bit of that problem, so maybe they budget a little bit for it, but maybe it's a much bigger problem. So your questioning ability can help them realize that problem is tenfold bigger, right? And they'll move heaven and hell to go find that budget to solve that problem. It's just like, the easiest analogy I could give is if you have a headache and you're like, you know what, I've got $10 to budget to solve my headache. I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to get some Tylenol. But then the headache doesn't get better. And you go to the doctor and they do an x-ray, an MRI, and they find that you have a brain tumor in your head that was causing that headache. And oh, by the way, you only have 6 months to live now. Well, you've only got $10 to budget for that headache. What are you going to do? It's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars because your insurance isn't going to pay for it. So you're going to go find the budget to solve that problem? Of course you are. And that's the problem with the companies. I see so many companies using BANT and they have so many prospects. They're like, well, they don't have a budget aside for this challenge. Well, they don't even know they have the challenge in the first place. Your questions help them uncover challenges and problems that they didn't even think they had. That's why BANT is so outdated. And companies that just say, oh, well, our prospects just don't have the budget. They don't have the authority. The need's not now. The timing's not right now. Yeah, because your questionability sucks. Sorry, my language. What are your thoughts about BANT?
Well, I'll just tell you that, we study as we mentioned, the world's fastest growing companies. And I think BANT, we asked that, and it's like in the 10 to 20%, that's it. So if that's an indicator to your point.
It's outdated.
Yeah.
But so many companies still use it like it's the gospel, I swear.
Anytime you come up with an acronym like that people get familiar with, you're going to go with it. I think, so we saw BANT actually take a precipitous dive about 4 years ago, actually. And that was not coincidentally in the, is that even not coincident? With the rise of account-based and targeting, I think the big thing that people realized is, if you're talking to the right company and the right people in that company, then then you keep going. Sure. And as you said, we have to build our muscle against, identifying key initiatives and then finding out what's keeping them from achieving those key initiatives in those companies. So if you look at the death of BANT sort of coincided with the idea that who the company is most important. So like, as Dan said, like the biggest thing everyone's doing is they're reevaluating their target market. Well, look, guys, I'll give you an absurd example. Amazon just got a $10 billion loan at like interest rates. I think it's like minuscule interest. So of course that's an absurd example, but like,
Right.
you don't grade them for BANT.
Yeah.
You are that is a company you want. So I know I gave an absurd example. I'll give you one on a local level. If, for example, supermarkets are correct. If you sell to supermarkets, you don't grade them on BANT.
Yeah.
Right. They are the right company. If they fit what you sell, your job is to sell that was the, in our data set, that was the killer of BANT, which was this realization that there are companies that should buy our product.
Yeah. They just don't know they have
that's
the
the
problem.
most important gate.
That's right. They have problems, but they don't know they have the problems, right? Until you know how to get them to engage and you're asking the right questions that help them realize they have those problems. That's why you're exactly right. You throw BANT out the window if you want to be a top selling organization right now, for sure. Can you give us, maybe I'll go back to Dan, can you give us one or two examples of extreme value in practice? I think you gave us one a minute ago. Can you give us another?
Yeah. So we have, there's a really good example of a single sign-on organization that it's like pretty high-tech kind of product. And they offer, a tool for you to manage like a single portal to log into all your things for all your employees, right? Okay. And they had historically sold to smaller businesses. And once this thing hit, they one of their sales plays that was so crucial for them was that they would have a sales engineer go in and whiteboard out their existing environment in order to identify holes and issues in all the applications that they have to manage single sign-on for with their existing process.
Okay.
And in order to sort of create a business case. And so what they did was obviously the sales engineers aren't able to do that now. They weren't able to travel there, and they were really trying to limit that, right, because of the travel and the time to a specific audience of their customers.
Sure.
What their reps started having a hard time, standing out. And so what they decided to do was they decided to create a mini version of that and doing it all remote. And so the team created a template, a small template that they could be filled out virtually. And so they started asking folks, hey, do you want a free sort of consultative, fun, collaborative session to help visualize where some of your single sign-on issues may come by spending time with one of our experts? Sure. As a way of creating value. So these, IT folks were taking meetings knowing that A, it would be an hour, and B, they may get some value out of it.
Sure.
And then if there were holes, guess what? We actually have something to talk about.
You have the solution to solve that problem, right?
Right.
I love that. Yeah, so it kind of opens.
Jeremy, one thing on what you said that's part of what Dan said is really important, which is if the buyer, the person you're talking to, doesn't know they have problem, they know they have they don't know what the problem is.
Yeah, they don't know the root cause.
If you expose that, you actually, and you do it in the format that Dan just talked about, which is really about their environment, and you end with a picture, you have actually enabled your buyer to talk about it internally. That's a key part of this, right? Which is they would go whiteboard it and say, here you go, because you can't just expose the problem to one person. And you see it in the movies, right? It's that sort of Lone Ranger's like, you have to listen to me. And it's like, whoa, we just go through and do this. And it's like, here are your issues. And here it is in a drawn picture. This is for you. This is for your internal deck. This is what you can forward. So there's this added benefit to what you're talking about, which is, if we're going to surprise them with what the real root cause issues are, and we do that in a high value way, that value is also to our new buyer who can take that and run that through the rest of the organization. That's powerful.
Well, it's very powerful because it helps, like you said, it helps them realize that they have problems maybe they didn't think they had, or challenges or holes that maybe could get much worse if they don't do anything about it. So you hit it right on the head. Guys, I can't thank you for being on today enough to be on with us today. I know your time is valuable. I know there's a couple of you got meetings to get into. So do you have any final thoughts or advice for our listeners? I know they're going to soak this up.
I think one piece of advice is extreme value is something that you can do today, right now, by solving one of your customers' problems.
Yeah.
And start there. Start there, and then see if this is a problem that you can sort of help address and shine light on in other areas. I think that just start small with extreme value if this concept is new.
No, it's true. It's taking smaller steps that lead you to larger steps. So here's what I want to know, because I want our listeners to learn more about what you guys do, because this is very valuable. If you're a business owner right now, you should be soaking this up. If you're a salesperson who's wanting to increase your pipeline and really help your prospects and win bigger deals and win bigger trust and become the authority in your market with what you sell, where can our listeners go to learn more about your advisory firm and how you help companies get to that level of revenue? Where can they go, guys?
Well, I would just keep it simple. Like, come to topohq.com. The blog we overshare. So you'll get a lot there. If you want some of our research on extreme value and messaging, you can actually email our analyst team. So that's analyst@topohq.com. And if you do that and say, hey, I want some extreme value messaging, and Jeremy Miner sent me, we'll send you some stuff that we typically reserve for customers, for the listeners of the show.
Yeah, I love that. There should be some customers on this call right now that get involved with your advisory firm, because I can see the value that you obviously offer with the clients that you already have right now. So thanks for being on. Both of you guys are rock stars. I'm glad that our listeners can go back and even hear this more than a couple of times, because you brought up a lot of valuable insight that's helping companies achieve levels of success that maybe they thought they couldn't even have. So that's available to everybody on here. So Craig, Dan, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having us, Jeremy.
Now, if you're serious about joining the top 1%, I mean the top 1%, and you want to experience more training content just like this, click the links right over there. Right over there, they're exactly what you need to see next. You see, I release new episodes featuring top salespeople and sales authorities, multiple six-figure, high six-figure, even seven-figure earners. And if you're new here, do yourself a favor and smash that subscribe button right below, and join our new Facebook group, Sales Revolution. You see, it's free, and there's a link in the description below just for you. We put it there for you. Finally, I make posts on Facebook and Instagram each and every day with more tips and training, so be sure and follow me and turn on your notifications. So make a comment in the first 7 minutes to any of my latest posts, share this episode, and there's a very real chance that you're gonna win some killer prizes. And here's the thing, don't sit on the sidelines. Don't be like everyone else. Get into the game. Join the sales revolution. Stay active, get involved, learn the right skills, and we will show you how to take your life and income to a level that most only dream about.